Hello. I want to talk about training situations with our dog, real-world opportunities to train with our dog, and actually mixing that or merging that in with a scheduled training session. So how do we get the most success out of that for ourselves as well as our dogs? It's really important that we focus on what's happening rather than what we want. We might actually set out to do a training session that's based around practicing loose leash walking or our recall, but the environment, the health of our dog, the situation, and other things that could actually influence our dog's emotional state may actually impede our ability to train what we want to train. And so we have to deal with what's happening rather than what we want to do in that situation. And so this video is basically just going to show a few examples of me introducing Morty to a few things that I was wanting to train, but we had to go with what that moment was providing us. And the reason why I want you to focus on what's happening rather than what you want is because all of those things that I mentioned before contribute to our dog's emotional state. And our dog's emotional state is going to demonstrate whether our dog is actually having a pleasant experience during that training session or that real-world opportunity. And I'll point some things out in the videos for you. So the first one is a really simple one. And I was wanting to introduce Morty to the harness. And this is a balance training harness. And so here's the video here, just pressing record on the video recorder. And yes, we're recording. And I'm just giving Morty some treats just for sniffing the leash there and looking at the harness on in my right hand, creating pleasant associations there. And I'm giving him some more treats there, just getting him used to looking at the harness, seeing the harness. Now I'm going to attempt to place that just over his muzzle and feeding him some treats through the loop. And he's sitting there really nicely, and that's a pleasant experience for him, so that's really good. Now you'll notice here that I attempt to place the harness just over his head, and he pulls away, so I'm just going to gently remove the harness and try again. I'm going to leave it there for a little longer, letting him pull away from the harness to create those pleasant associations. He has choice in that matter. And so once again, starting again, just giving him some more treats, getting him used to seeing the harness, feeling the harness, and then I'm stopping my hand because he just pulled back slightly, letting that harness just sit there. So he's getting used to what that feels like over his neck, giving him some more treats just to make that nice and pleasant for him. And lo and behold, what I would like to do is train Morty with that harness. But unfortunately, what's happening is the harness isn't actually fitting him, so it's too small. And I'll just stop that video there because I'm just adjusting the girth strap, but it turns out that it's too small. So what's happening is that I need to find a different alternative. So I thought, let's have a look at putting the leash on and putting the leash on his collar, because he has a collar already. When we adopted him, he had a little flat snap collar with a quick releasing mechanism. So once again, just asking Morty to follow my hand and asking for a sit. Well done, Morty. And I'm going to give him a treat and get him to have a little bit of a nibble on the treat while I just reach under his chin and attach the leash to the collar. That's creating pleasant associations for him, and it's not reaching over his head, which can increase our dog's excitement levels and make it unpleasant for them. Now, I want you to just focus on the left-hand side here in the blinds. They're actually rustling, and I'm just getting my grip with my clicker and my leash in an appropriate handling position. Just gauging Morty's response there. And I want you to pay attention to the blinds. They're actually rustling, and that's going to come into play when we look at the other videos. So I'm just asking Morty to follow my hand target in different directions as well as towards me. So that's the That's a nice little response there from Morty, well done. Just doing a quick look at me, getting his focus on me, and we'll just stop that video there because that's more of the same there. Now, just paying attention to what was happening with those blinds. They were actually rustling because it was a windy day. Now, what I wanted to do was to start training Morty with some loose leash walking and getting him used to being on a leash there. Now it's really windy and you can see his reaction. His tail isn't held as high as it usually is, and of course what you want to do is have a good training session, but something has just toppled over in the background. So Morty's focused on that, so I'm creating pleasant associations with his startle, with his being startled by that falling over, and just reassuring him there, having the treats coming. He's acknowledging that, he's looking at that, and I'm just talking to him calmly. Good boy, that's great, Morty, well done, and giving him some more treats. So trying to continue creating pleasant associations with that stressful environment because of the wind and the unexpected loud noise of that falling garden bin. Now he's still looking at that every now and then, and he's just looked at his hindquarters. Now I'll touch back on that after the video's finished. So I'm just, and again he's done that there, so I'm just getting him to follow my hand, and we're just moving out of shot there. Coming back in, I'm just asking him this way and just bridging and rewarding that behaviour. And he's going to have a little bit of an investigation there, so I'm going to let him have a sniff of that. And I did bridge, I used my clicker to reward that investigative behaviour, or him acknowledging that area, but I had to then follow him to give him his reward, because remember, when we're using our clicker, when we actually press that clicker and make that unique sound, then we have to pay our dogs. Now I'm just asking him to come away. He's had a nervous little shake there, but he wants to have a little bit more of an investigation. Now I'm holding my hand in one position and I'm trying not to put tension on the leash, and I'm just asking him to come back with a different position of my hand target there to try to keep him more focused on me and closer to me, moving him away from that distracting area over there, and then we'll finish this little mini training session. He's still looking at that area there, so that's still piquing his interest. Whether he's not feeling comfortable with that, he's sat for me, which is really lovely, but he's still concerned with his hindquarters. So I'm just going to finish the session there. Now I just want to have a quick recap on Morty turning around looking at his hindquarters. Now we also have to take into account the health of our dogs, not just the environment, what's going on, but also the health of our dogs, the mobility of our dogs, whether they're older, are they able to walk freely and in a mobile way. The breed, the type of breed that they are, whether they're short legs, long legs, also their motivation for that training session. Now you could see that Morty was turning his head towards his hindquarters. Okay, something's going on there. Was it so windy that it was blowing dust from the garden onto him and it just happened to hit him, feel like sandpaper maybe just hitting him on his hindquarters, or was it something else? Now his anal sacs are probably something that, you know, you should say, well, maybe he might need to have his anal sacs checked, but I had actually expressed his anal sacs a couple of days ago, so I was happy that that wasn't the case. So it could have been a flea, it could have been a number of things. It could have been the environment, the wind blowing things onto him, onto his coat, but we'll never know. But I decided to end that training session there because that was creating an additional distraction and it was affecting Morty's emotional state. Now, going out to the front door, because it was so windy, I had a rethink after this little mini training session. So, offering a start cue. So what I wanted to happen was to do a nice little introduction to the leash and the collar there, but something startled Morty. There was a noise because it's so windy. There was a noise upstairs must have blown something over. So he's focused on that. And of course, Morty then decides to jump up the first few steps. So I remain calm, try to keep the leash close to my hip, and I was able to then lure Morty back down with a follow the hand target and reward him for that. But he's still focused on that noise that startled him. So that's going to distract him from being engaged in what I'd like him to focus on. Now, because it's also a windy day, I open the door here and we can see how windy it is out there, and I actually decided that having him on a leash, a flat leash and a collar, was not going to be conducive to a pleasant training session and a pleasant experience for Morty. So what I did, I took that off, and I'll just stop that video there because I'm just rewarding him and just creating pleasant associations by giving him some treats while he's looking at all of the hustle and bustle of the wind blowing through the trees and the leaves and the noise that it's creating. So I'm just offering him some food rewards there just to create pleasant associations. Now, what I wanted to do when we got out into the driveway here was to do a little training session. You'll notice that Morty's got a harness on. And this is just an excerpt from one of the other ones, a little training session that we did. Now, I was able to get him back with a nice follow the hand target at a little bit of a trot myself. And I had to get up some momentum because he was really wanting to go and say hello to the neighbour that you can see there, who are just unloading their cars and going into their house. But because that car was coming down the street, I had to, think quickly, and I had to try to make that experience for Morty to come back with me as pleasant as possible, but it was a bit of an emergency situation from my perspective. Now here, I'm just trying to keep closer to Morty because I can see that he's still looking around. You can see that the wind is really quite whipping through those trees there, and he hasn't seen a walker before, a metal walker, but I'm just trying to keep him close to me. I'm asking him for a sit. Another thing to check as well, is that floor, the bitumen there, the driveway, too cold for him? Now he's distracted, and once again he's actually looking back at his hindquarters. So I'm a little bit concerned here. So I'm just going to keep offering him some food rewards and just talking to him nice and calmly. That's a good distance there. He's just sitting comfortably. His ears are not held erect. They're just a little bit angled. And so that suggests to me that he's not as alert and as investigative and as bright as he usually is. So just continuing to give him some food treats, try to create pleasant associations, realising, okay, now he's found some distractions there on the ground, so it's probably a good time just to end that training session there, and that's exactly what I do. Now, the next one here is probably around about 15 to 20 minutes later. We thought we'd have another little training session, as Morty was a lot more enthusiastic when we got back inside the house, so I thought I'd try again. But now we've actually found some distractions on the driveway. So what I wanted to do was not going to happen, because what's happening is Morty's being distracted and rewarded with what he's sniffing on the ground. And even though I've got some really high value treats in my treat pouch, some cooked chicken and some other kibble that I reserve for the training sessions, it's not piquing his interest as much as what's on the ground. So what I want to happen is not happening. I have to focus on what Morty is giving me, and in that situation I have to then say, okay, let's try to stay as close as I can to him and just try to keep him focused on me without him wandering away and putting tension on the leash, and then me having to come closer, which is what I'm doing now, holding onto the leash, trying not to put additional tension, coming closer, and then I was lucky to use my follow the hand target to get him back to me and face away from any potential distractions. He sat there, which is nice. Now, once again, just sitting on that driveway there, is that cold? Is that hot? Depending on the weather conditions, that's something to consider as well. Now, he's looking around again, so he's really not comfortable with that situation, and this is where I leave the training session here for that day, and I've given him a finish cue and just giving him a gentle rub on the bottom just to reassure him, trying not to get the chicken, remnants of the chicken on his coat there. So we finished that training session there. All right, so what I wanted to do certainly wasn't able to happen because of the environment, because of Morty's motivation and the stresses of the environment, which were all contributing to his emotional state. And I wasn't able to make that experience as pleasant as I could, so it's best to just try to work with what you've got, but end that training session as quickly as possible on a high note for your dog. Now, I wanted to try this again, so what I did was I thought, okay, let's wait for a day that's not so windy, that's nice and sunny and nice and calm, and let's sweep the driveway. So that's what I did. I got rid of all the potential distractions on the driveway itself, and that was going to then help me to get Morty's focus back onto me and what I would like to do, which is try to start training him on some loose leash walking just in that segment of the driveway there. Now, this was the last video that I have, and this is take 2. And what I wanted to do was, of course, start training Morty with some loose leash work. But once again, at the same time we started, our neighbour arrived. So what I'm doing is I'm staying at the top end of the driveway to keep as much distance away from the neighbour, the distraction, and myself and Morty. And I'm giving him lots of treats. He's looking at me, which is really great, but he's also looking at the neighbour, so that's fine. He's offered to sit there, and I'm going to keep offering him some treats. I'm going to do a follow the hand technique, but he's just decided to get up a bit of a trot, and so I'm stopping, then edging up that leash there to get his attention, and then asking him for a sit again. He's focused on me, which is really great. And I'm going to do that in waves, so I'm going to then ask him to come back, and then we're going to inch further down the driveway, and that was what I was wanting to do and what I was hoping we could do. So once again, increasing the distance away from any potential distractions, the street, the neighbour, and then working on a sit, coming close to him just to try to get some more focus, doing a look there. Well done, Morty, you did very well. And you can see it's not so windy there. So we're going to venture a little bit further down the driveway. And that's really good. He's focused on me. His tail still isn't held as high as it usually is, so he's still feeling a little less confident than I would like. So I'm keeping an eye on his emotional state, and I'm getting him engaged, getting him to follow the hand, just very simple things. Now that was too far away from him. That was a little bit better, but I could have actually delivered a better technique for him there, so as not to confuse him. So we're going to venture down the driveway because he's focusing a little bit more on me and he's more engaged, so his learning pathways in his brain are engaged. I'm able to ask him for a new behaviour. He's following me nicely, that's really good, focused on me. And he spotted a couple of dogs that are just around about 15 metres away. He's offered a growl, and you can see his tail's up, and it's difficult for me to get his attention, so I'm trying to keep my hands straight without putting more tension on the leash, talking to him nice and calmly, and just trying to give him a little bit of reassurance. Yes, Morty? And I'm able to offer him some treats there. Still talking to him, he offers another little roof, and then I was very lucky to get him back with my follow the hand technique, and then using the hand target in a different way to further ask him to come with me back to the top of the driveway. So, and I'm just going to end the training session there. So I just wanted you to, and he's looking around again, just if you saw that, he's looking around again so he can hear the wind, he can hear some things, he's focused in the environment. And so really, we did better that time, but it's still a lot for him to process and cope with. And because Morty's going through his adolescent phase, so his startle response is a lot more heightened. So I need to keep an eye on his behaviour, and particularly when he's coming out of his adolescent phase, just to make sure that there's none of those behaviours that I'm seeing with respect to being uncomfortable in windy environments, or other dogs in the distance those sorts of things. And I need to monitor that and make sure that there aren't any genetic contributions or other things that may have occurred in his socialisation period that are causing long-lasting effects on his behaviour. So I have to work with what Morty's presenting me at the time. So all of these video examples are simply just to help you understand when the environment, the triggers, the noises, just the ambience around you can actually influence your dog's emotional state and can mean that your training session may not go the way you want it to go. So really it's understanding all of those things, how they influence your dog's emotional state, and to understand that what you want may not always happen because of what's happening in the environment. So that's about it for this video. Hope you enjoyed the video examples, and we'll talk again soon.